Sir Lionel Strong was very upset with his son Sir Harwin, since Harwin's affair with Rhaenyra had endangered their lives. But Harwin was not the first person to have a scandalous affair, nor even the first Strong to have an affair. Before Harwin, there was a man named Sir Lucamore Strong, a knight of the Kingsguard, and he had not one, but 3 affairs. In 84 AC, a proud 19-year-old Sir Braxton Beesbury, also known as Stinger, slept with Princess Aerea Targaryen, and in the eyes of King Jaehaerys, that was a crime, since Princess Aerea's body didn't belong to her, it belonged to him. Jaehaerys sentenced Stinger to trial by combat, and to his credit, King Jaehaerys named himself the opposing champion. Despite being much older, and despite Stinger being a skilled and confident young warrior, King Jaehaerys slew him with Blackfire. Before they fought to the death, King Jaehaerys told Stinger that he could geld him and send him to the wall. "That is how I served Sir Lucamore," the king said, "and he was a better man than you." In this video, we are going to go over the full life of Sir Lucamore Strong. Maegor the Cruel began the construction of the Dragonpit in 45 AC. 10 years later, Maegor the Cruel is dead, his nephew Jaehaerys was king, and they finally finished it. The master of ships, Lord Redwyne, proposed that they celebrate the completion of the Dragonpit with the tourney at mid-year. Lists were raised in the field west of the city walls between the Lion Gate and the King's Gate, and the jousting there was said to be especially splendid. Lord Redwyne's eldest son, Sir Robert, showed his prowess with the lance against the best the realm had to offer, whilst his brother Rickard won the Squire's tourney and was knighted on the field by the king himself. But the champion's laurels went to the gallant and handsome Sir Daemon Dondarrion of Blackhaven, who won the love of the commons and queen alike when he crowned Princess Daenerys as his queen of love and beauty. No dragons had been settled in the Dragonpit as yet, so the colossal edifice was chosen for the site of the tourney's grand melee, a clash of arms such as King's Landing had never seen before. 77 knights took part in 11 teams. The competitors began a horse, but once unhorsed, continued on foot, battling with sword, mace, axe, and Morningstar. When all the teams but one had been eliminated, the surviving members of the final team turned on one another until only a single champion remained. Though the participants bore only blunted tourney weapons, the battles were hard-fought and bloody to the delight of the crowds. 2 men were killed and more than 200 wounded. Queen Alysanne wisely forbade her favorites, Jonquil Dark and Tom the Strummer, from taking part, but Sir Willam Stafford, a short, stout, big-bellied man whom the commons called the Keg of Ale, once more took the field to the roars of approval from the commons. When he fell, the small folk found a new favorite in the up-jumped squire Sir Harry's Hog, whose house name and pig's head helm earned him the style of Harry the Ham. Other notables who joined the melee included Sir Alan Bullock, Leif Dragonstone, Rogar Baratheon's brothers Sir Boris, Sir Garin, and Sir Ronald, an infamous hedge knight called Sir Guile the Cunning, and Sir Alistair Rain, champion of the Westerlands and master-at-arms at Castle Rock. After hours of blood and clangor, however, the last man standing was a strapping young knight from the Riverlands, a broad-shouldered blonde bull called Sir Lucamore Strong. A year prior, King Jaehaerys' niece, Aerea Targaryen, had flown off on Balerion. She was nowhere to be found, but then Jaehaerys received word from Pentos. Shepherds there spoke in fearful tones of a monster on the prowl, devouring entire flocks and leaving only bloody bones behind. The king sent a dozen men across the narrow sea to Pentos to try to hunt down this beast, led by Sir Willam the Wasp of his Kingsguard. Unfortunately, winter came to Westeros in 56 AC, and with it, grim news out of Essos. The men that King Jaehaerys had sent to investigate the great beast prowling the hills north of Pentos were all dead. Their commander, Sir Willam the Wasp, had engaged a guide in Pentos, a local who claimed to know where the monster lurked. Instead, he had led them into a trap, and somewhere in the Velvet Hills of Andalos, Sir Willam and his men had been set upon by brigands. Though they had given a good account of themselves, the numbers were against them, and in the end, they were overwhelmed and slain. Sir Willam had been the last to fall, it was said. His head had been returned to one of Lord Rhaego's agents in Pentos. There is no monster, Septon Barth concluded after hearing the sad tale. Only men stealing sheep and telling tales to frighten other men away. Miles Smallwood, the king's hand, urged the king to punish Pentos for the outrage, but Jaehaerys was unwilling to make war upon an entire city for the crimes of some outlaws. So the matter was put to rest, and the fate of Sir Willam the Wasp was inscribed in the White Book of the Kingsguard. To fill his place, Jaehaerys awarded a white cloak to Sir Lucamore Strong, the victor of the great melee in the Dragonpit. Later that year, Aerea returned to King's Landing on the back of Balerion. Scarcely had he touched the ground than Princess Aerea slid from his back. Even those who had known her best during her years at court scarce recognized the girl. She was near enough to naked as to make no matter, her clothing no more than rags and tatters clinging to her arms and legs. Her hair was tangled and matted, her limbs as thin as sticks. "Please," she cried to the knights and squires and serving men who had seen her descend. Then, as they came rushing toward her, she said, "I never," and collapsed. Sir Lucamore Strong had been at his post on the bridge across the dry moat surrounding Maegor's Holdfast. Shoving aside the other onlookers, he lifted the princess in his arms and carried her across the castle to Grand Maester Benefer. Later, he would tell anyone who would listen that the girl was flushed and burning with fever, her skin so hot he could feel it even through the enameled scale of his armor. She had blood in her eyes as well, the knight claimed, and there was something inside her, he said. Something moving that made her shudder and twist in my arms. He did not tell these tales for long, though. The next day, King Jaehaerys sent for him and commanded him to speak no more of the princess. 17 years later, in 73 AC, King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne's older sister Rhaena died up at Harrenhal. When she died, King Jaehaerys ordained that she be burned at Harrenhal and her ashes interred there. My brother Aegon died at the hands of our uncle in the battle beneath the God's Eye, his grace said at a funeral pyre. His wife, my sister Rhaena, was not with him at the battle, but she died that day as well. With Rhaena's death, Jaehaerys granted Harrenhal and all its lands and incomes to Sir Bywin Strong, the brother of Sir Lucamore Strong of his Kingsguard and a renowned knight in his own right. But then, not long after New Year's End, a shameful revelation came to light that shocked both court and city. The amiable and well-loved Sir Lucamore Strong of the Kingsguard, a favorite of the small folk, was found to have been secretly wed despite the vows he had sworn as a white sword. Worse, he had taken not one, but 3 wives, keeping each woman ignorant of the other 2 and fathering no fewer than 16 children on the 3 of them. In Flea Bottom and along the Street of Silk, where whores and panders plied their trade, men and women of low birth and lower morals took a wicked pleasure in the fall of an anointed knight and made bawdy japes about Sir Lucamore the Lusty. But no laughter was heard in the Red Keep. Jaehaerys and Alysanne had been especially fond of Lucamore Strong and were mortified to learn that he had played them both for fools. His brothers of the Kingsguard were even angrier. It was Sir Ryan Redwine who discovered Sir Lucamore's transgressions and brought them to the attention of the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, who in turn brought them to the king. Speaking for his sworn brothers, Sir Giles Morgan declared that Strong had dishonored all they stood for and requested that he be put to death. When dragged before the Iron Throne, Sir Lucamore fell to his knees, confessed his guilt, and begged the king for mercy. Jaehaerys might well have granted him the same, but the errant knight made the fatal error of appending, "for the sake of my wives and children," to his plea. As Septon Barth observed, that was tantamount to throwing his crimes in the king's face. "When I rose against my uncle Maegor, 2 of his Kingsguard abandoned him to fight for me," Jaehaerys responded. "They might well believe they would be allowed to keep their white cloaks once I'd won, perhaps even be honored with lordships and a high place at court. I sent them to the wall instead. I wanted no oathbreakers around me then or now. Sir Lucamore, you swore a sacred vow before gods and men to defend me and mine with your own life, to obey me, fight for me, die for me if need be. You also swore to take no wife, father no children, and remain chaste. If you could shrug aside the second vow so easily, why should I believe that you would honor the first?" Then Queen Alysanne spoke up, saying, "You made a mockery of your oath to the Kingsguard, but those were not the only vows you broke. You dishonored your marriage vows as well, not once, but thrice. None of these women are lawfully wed, so these children I see behind you are bastards, one and all. They are the true innocents in this, sir. Your wives were ignorant of one another, I am told, but each of them must surely have known that you are a white sword, a knight of the Kingsguard. To that extent, they all share your guilt, as does whatever drunken septon you found to marry you. For them, some mercy may be warranted, but for you, I will not have you, near my lord, sir." There was no more to be said. As the false knight's wives and children wept or cursed or stood in silence, Jaehaerys commanded that Sir Lucamore be gelded forthwith, then clapped in irons and sent off to the wall. "The Night's Watch will require vows from you as well," his grace warned. "See that you keep them, or the next thing you lose shall be your head." Jaehaerys left it to his queen to deal with the three families. Alysanne decreed that Sir Lucamore's sons might join their father on the wall, if they wished. The two oldest boys chose to do so. The girls would be accepted as novices of the faith, if that was their desire. Only one elected that path. The other children were to remain with their mothers. The first of the wives, with her children, was given over to the charge of Lucamore's brother Bywin, who had been raised to the Lord of Harrenhal not half a year earlier. The second wife and her offspring would go to Driftmark to be fostered by Daemon Velaryon, Lord of the Tides. The third wife, whose children were the youngest, one still on her breast, would be sent down to Storm's End, where Garren Baratheon and young Lord Bormund would see to their upbringing. None were ever to call themselves strong, the queen decreed. From this day, they would bear the bastard names Rivers, Waters, and Storm. For that gift, Alysanne told them, "You may thank your father."